Good day, everyone, and welcome back to the second half of day 4 at the Digital Disruptors Week, brought to you by MDEC Malaysia. This is Malaysia, the digital heart of ASEAN. Join us as I welcome the next session entitled Leveraging on Ecosystems to Reach Greater Heights. Moderating this session is Hannah Wade, the Trade Commissioner at the Australian Trade and Investment Commission. Hannah focuses on facilitating trade and investment between Australia and Indonesia across various industries. She has also previously worked in roles attracting foreign technology companies to expand and invest in Australia, as well as supporting Australian digital technology companies to go global. This I pass over to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much, and a real pleasure to be here today and moderating this really exciting session. While I am the Trade and Investment Commissioner to Indonesia, I've had a lot to do with the Malaysian ecosystem and work closely with our colleagues in Austrade in Kuala Lumpur. So I'm really pleased to be here and speaking with a great group of panel on an area really close to my heart, which is, cross-border collaboration and working together more closely in this exciting technology innovation ecosystem. So I would like to actually invite the panelists to introduce themselves rather than me doing it for them. So I'll hand over firstly to Alvin to do a quick introduction of him and his business.
Great. Hi everyone. Thanks, Hannah, for that introduction. Yeah, hi everyone. I am Alvin. I'm the founder and Group CEO of Blinkware Technology. We were founded in 2013 in Malaysia. We specialize in AI software, specifically in high growth sectors like manufacturing, medical technology, and most recently moving into bioinformatics, in particular looking at patents of DNA, RNA, antibodies as well using AI. We are on the process of an IPO on the ASX, and that's why we have such a passion for what's happening in Australia as well. I was brought up in Australia from 6 months old until 25 years later. I'm a hybrid in this panel, I guess. Both Australia and Malaysia is my house and my home. So yeah, I'm so glad to be on this panel. Thanks.
Thanks, Alvin. And I'll hand over to David Albaiceta from Kerb.
Thank you, Hannah. So yeah, David here. I'm the regional director for Kerb in Southeast Asia. I'm based here in Kuala Lumpur. And quick overview of Kerb. Kerb, we want to solve the problem of packing. And we want to do that by with software, basically. So we have created a technology platform that allows car park owners and drivers to connect, and for the car park owners to reach the car park spaces, and for the drivers to book from them. So it's a bit like an Airbnb, but for the parking industry. And by doing that, we believe that we're going to be able to untap a lot of car park spaces that are currently underutilized, but they could be put out there in the platform for people to use, because we know how hard it can be in some occasions to find car park spaces. And obviously, with this solution, we are digitizing the whole customer experience, and we allow drivers to book, pay, and access into car park spaces from the phone. So it's a completely digital experience that makes redundant the needs for parking tickets and cash and the usual stuff.
Thanks so much, David. So fascinating and well-needed solution, I think, in many areas. Finally, go to Adam Day.
Thanks, Hannah. I'm Adam Day, owner of a company called Abuzz Solutions. We're an Australian company. I'm located here in Sydney, but we've opened up globally, which is why I'm so excited to be on this panel discussion. We've opened up in Singapore, in Malaysia, KL, in Bangkok, and more recently in Dubai as well. We've been around about 17 years. What our organisation does is we're an interactive wayfinding software company. So what that is indoor navigation and outdoor navigation. Typically, you'll see us, for example, in Malaysia and KL in Petronas Towers. We're very proud of that premium shopping mall, KLCC. And it's you'll walk up and see an interactive touchscreen or a directory, it might be known as. You can look for product, name, what's on, H&M, Zara, some tenant specific, and we literally map to that location. And it's a cross-platform. It's a web-based software platform enabling us to put on a directory, on a website, on mobile, do mobile analytics. And it's just like David was talking about, it's very much about enhancing customer experience. Whether in the segments we're in, shopping malls, airports, smart cities, hospitals, really anything that needs interactive navigation.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Adam. And I think this is something we'll be exploring through the next few questions, at least, that I'd like to ask is finding that product market fit, which it seems like you all have really innovative solutions that you're looking to deliver to make life easier in many cases. So I might go to you first, Alvin, in terms of your experience in expanding your tech business to new countries and to Australia. This is something that I think many people on this session might be interested in. So for you, Alvin, what were the key considerations you had when selecting Australia as an expansion market, and how did you find that product market fit?
Yeah, thanks for that, Hannah. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible in my views about Australia, but it was a very strategic decision, very strategic move for Blinkware, especially when we're moving into deep life sciences, we're moving into medical technology, and Australia was a perfect fit for us in terms of its position as, you know, one of the top healthcare providers, a top healthcare workflow in the world. It's currently ranked the 9th by WHO in terms of its healthcare facilities and capabilities. So obviously building a tech that's based on medical and medical technology, you really need to be based on infrastructure, which is world's best, right? So that made sense for us. There's many reasons as to why we found Australia as a really right product fit and a right market for us. So we also noticed that in Australia, medical technology, in particular AI imaging and X-ray imaging and CT scans and efficiency using AI was a huge focus area for the Australian government. Around 2019, there was a new grant and a new facility that was launched by Australia that, you know, provides startup companies up to 19 million Aussie dollars just to start up a company based on that. So we were already in that space about, you know, 2 to 3 years before that. And we thought, you know, for us to leverage that and to build a team there and to build a business in Australia and to leverage that really made sense. And some of our studies showed that, you know, we're really focused, and our target segments are radiologists, they're doctors, they're hospitals. And since the COVID hit in 2019, we're finding radiologists hitting close to 297% overtime work. So what happened there was it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to do a chest X-ray examination, diagnosis, and it was becoming a bottleneck in the workflow. So we thought, look, a technology like this, which turns around a full chest X-ray and providing chronic illnesses in less than 1.5 seconds, makes a huge impact in terms of the workflow, and it was really at the right market and real right segment. The other one that really we touched upon also was the aging population that Australia really has, right? So around 75 years old to 85 years old, we're seeing the biggest growth in terms of population growth. As such, that's going to add huge weight on the health system, and the government really needs to focus on that. You know, they're the segment that needs the most patient care. There needs to be focused in that. So so Australia was really strategic, and as we went into that exploration in 2019 into Australia, the receptiveness of our technology by the doctors and even by our partners was overwhelming, and we were approached by multiple PE firms and corporate advisors to go for a listing in Australia, because at that point in time, tech stocks in Australia was just going, you know, they were skyrocketing and doing so well. So everything kind of fit according to our plan. I'm not saying that Malaysia wasn't a great place for us, but we could see that going into Australia, we could really propel and accelerate that growth. And strategically positioned in Australia, we're able to also leverage to New Zealand and to UK as well. And having that credibility, building a technology in Australia with that accreditation and that standard really allows us to go into the ASEAN market, into the Asian markets, which a lot of the medical facilities and medical aspects of Asia always looks to the Western countries. You know, are you regulated by Australia? Are you regulated by US? And that type of quality that you bring into, for example, Malaysia adds a lot of weight for us as well. So it was kind of going into Australia, building in Australia, come back. You know, so that was, you know, one of the key challenge factors that we definitely considered when going to Australia. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Alvin. And yeah, I think it sounds like, you know, you find what's the problem in the market, and but also that market having support and interest, and, you know, seeing that immediate reaction must have been fantastic for you.
Yeah.
I'll ask a similar question to David, sort of going the other direction. So for Kerb, you've expanded into Malaysia. How did you find your product market fit for the Malaysian market?
Yeah, exactly. So a bit, yeah, as you say, on the opposite direction to Alvin. So Kerb being an Australian company. So for us, I mean, when we started looking at additional markets to extend, so we look at obviously this part of the world. So we consider the region, we consider the ASEAN market, and then we look at ASEAN. So Malaysia made a lot of sense for us to come. Obviously, the obvious reasons that they've been again and again quoted, but this actually plays a role, like the fact that it's an English-speaking country, which obviously makes it very, very, very easy in terms of the legal system. I mean, being a Commonwealth country, I mean, similar to Australia. But then, I mean, more specific to us, being a software parking app. Obviously, I mean, everybody who's been here has experienced that parking is a challenge. So obviously, there's a market opportunity for us. I mean, Malaysia has one of the highest car ownership rates in the world. Of course, I mean, here you don't talk about double parking, you talk about triple parking. Yes, obviously, parking is obviously something that we thought we could help solve. And at the same time, I mean, we saw cities like KL with many smart cities initiatives that are very much aligned to our strategy as well and what we're trying to achieve. So it allows for collaboration at the government level, at the city level, in some of these strategies. And then more in general, of course, I mean, the digital penetration here in Malaysia, I mean, it aligns as well very well with us, right? I mean, we are digital parking app. So obviously, I mean, the fact that the mobile penetration here in Malaysia is so high, the smartphone penetration is so high, debit card ownership, credit card ownership, I mean, percentages of are so high. So obviously, those are very, very important factors for us that lead us to obviously to come into the market. And yeah, we are based here, so we have registered a company here. So we have localized, we have an entity here, and then from here we do see it as a gateway into the other markets, which it's a bit of I mean, something that there will be said, and now Malaysia is the gateway to ASEAN, but we do believe it is. And actually, in the time that we've been here, we've been making our inroads into neighboring countries like Thailand, and very successfully. And yes, we have done it through Zoom from Australia, but when you're talking to business partners in other parts of the world here in the region, when they see that you are committed to the region, that you are already, let's say in Malaysia, they see the commitment, and probably they say, well, these guys are real, you know, they really want to do business here in the region. So it does help a lot. And of course, I mean, there are similarities in all these markets. I mean, despite the differences, there are some similarities that do help a lot. So yeah, all these factors, I would say, contributed for us to make the decision to come here.
Thanks, David. That's really fascinating. And I think, you know, it'll be so interesting in this sort of hybrid environment that we're living in now of, you know, utilizing Zoom and fantastic virtual functions like these, but also that importance of building relationships and sort of making sure that's part of your strategy. So on that, and perhaps, you know, we can reflect on that point, I'd like to ask, you know, what the biggest challenge has been, and you've all expanded overseas already. So what has been the biggest challenge for you, and how have you overcome this challenge? I might start with Adam on this question at Abuzz.
Yeah, certainly. Well, look, I remember it so clearly 8 years ago, we being an Australian company and dominating this market, and we literally were the leader, and we believed the best technology, and we made this decision. Asia is definitely the market for us, and for all the reasons the two ahead of me just said, there's such a big opportunity for us, and there was so much investment and development. So you can hear the excitement in my voice. It was just so exciting for us to get into that market. And it was a bit of a no-brainer, we thought. But we definitely fairly obvious challenges when you talk about them now openly, but they were very consistent across all markets. And we targeted Singapore and Malaysia definitely first as priority. And the number one challenge that we faced everywhere we went was, quite frankly, we need local presence. We need someone on the ground. And we're an Australian company, and we were flying in, flying out to do business, to get growth in this target market I talked about earlier, which really is shopping malls, your KLCCs, your Marina Bay Sands, your Ions, targeting these premium shopping malls. But it was absolutely a barrier of entry for us, is do you have an office? Do you have someone on the ground? Who's it going to be? And whether it was, it was a bit of a cultural thing as well. So we overcame that by simply by setting up a registered office and an entity as number one. But we learned very quickly that, and again, it sounds very obvious, but how critical it was for us to get a very good sales channel and a reseller program in place. And Austrade worked with us very closely. I've put a lot of thanks out to a number of people, Irene Tan in particular, that helped me in Singapore and get into Malaysia, and introducing us to partners that we would use in Australia, which are building companies, architects, consultants. And this enabled us to not only get representation on the ground, and I think it's about literally becoming more legitimate as you work in a place like Malaysia and KL by doing that. And it definitely gave us more momentum by doing this. And the second point on that was, and again, it is fairly obvious, but awareness. Everyone in Australia, we deal with Westfield, which is the biggest shopping mall ownership in the world. But to get that into this country that we targeted, Malaysia, to get into KL, and hence we would have to collaborate. And really consultancy company and wayfinding consultants, and introducing ourselves to them, getting credibility with them, and then them leading the charge when, you know, something was under development, and putting us forward as an Australian company, but working with them locally. And these were very challenging, and took us a good 6 months to overcome that. But once we got that credibility, the momentum and the activity started. And probably the last thing to mention on that was very much cost. The pricing structure, the pricing strategy, and the expectation of what they will pay in a new market compared to Australia. And it's very different. And we had to change our entire pricing strategy, understand what they're prepared to pay. And the expectation was a lot lower to pay in Malaysia than in Australia. So we moved to what we call SaaS pricing, which possibly everyone knows, but it's over like a 5-year contract of licensing as opposed to a heavy amount up front. And they would have been definitely our 3 biggest challenges that we faced, but very easy to overcome. We just needed to be aware of them.
Thanks, Adam. And I might ask a similar question to David. Is that your experience? It sounds like, you know, pricing and getting the right price for the right market, but also building trust and showing commitment to market are key points from Adam. Did you have a different experience or similar points?
No, actually, very, very, very similar to Adam. So it's true that, I mean, credibility is a very important factor, and it's true that you build this credibility through having a presence in the market. So as Adam was saying, unfortunately, the fly in, fly out, it only lasts for a period of time. At some point, you just have to obviously localize. And then with localizing, in our case, came as well employing local people as well, which was very, very helpful, because obviously in every market, people do business differently. So we need these local people as well to tell us, yeah, how to conduct a meeting, if it needs to be in a tete-a-tete place, or it needs to be in a high-end restaurant, or if it needs to be in the office, or if it needs to be over the phone. So little things, but of course, I'm not Malaysian, so we rely obviously in the local expertise for conducting a business, for targeting new companies, new clients, and things like that. And yes, you need the company to build this credibility. And pricing is interesting that Adam mentioned it as well. maybe the fact that obviously, I mean, coming from Australia, obviously with a different currency, then obviously we sense a bit the challenges of having a competitive product in the market. Malaysia is incredibly cost competitive, which is actually very good. I mean, because it kind of forces you really to develop a cost competitive solution. It's everywhere, of course, don't get me wrong, in every market, but it's true that, I mean, in our case, in our market and here, so it's pricing can be a very sensitive topic. So we really have to address it and make sure that we have an offering that is competitive in the market. So you do have to adjust and make the necessary changes. Of course. So yeah, I mean, you have to invest in the market and where you want to go. There is no shortcut, basically.
Thanks, David. And obviously it presents some challenges at the moment during the pandemic, but I think that goes to the importance of having partnerships and trying to build those to the extent possible virtually while we can, and then sort of being ready, hopefully at the point where travel is possible again, that you've done the groundwork, right, to be able to have those meetings as soon as you can travel. Alvin, did you have anything to answer on this sort of challenges and overcoming obstacles piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whether you're coming from Australia to Malaysia, or whether you're going from Malaysia to Australia, the challenges are pretty similar. Even for us, moving into a very niche market, which is in medical technology, being a new kid on the block, we're well known in Malaysia, but we're not well known in Australia at all. So the first thing that we really needed to do was to establish very strong key opinion leaders, right? The heavyweights to support our technology and to really allow us to position and establish well in Australia. But where we're very different is in the areas of regulation and standards, right? And the medical standards in Malaysia, in the countries that we've gone into in Southeast Asia, the regulations are very different to Australia. So we picked it up really quickly. In Malaysia, you don't have something called Therapeutic Goods Administration, which is a TGA approval, similar to FDA in Australia, in America, sorry. And so that type of whole process really challenged our programming and challenged our capabilities. So we had to re-engineer a lot of our software to hit those level of standards that Australia really has. So yeah, those were kind of shockers for us. We thought we were going to go in there with the software that's already been accredited, and all of a sudden, the doctors are telling us, hey, have you got TGA? Have you got FDA? Have you got CE? Have you got all this stuff, right? And all of a sudden the big dream becomes hang on, everything's going to be 6 months later or 7 months later. So that was a real challenge, but that really enables us to build really good tech and really get the right things in the right place. We found good partners, and because as I shared, we're in a niche market. The doctors and the hospitals are really our key opinion leaders. So we're not so mass in that sense. So our target was pretty straightforward in that sense. Yeah, but the other aspect obviously is culture as well. A bit of a culture change for us as well.
Thanks, Alvin. And yeah, I think your point there around sort of being prepared and knowing the regulatory environment you're moving into is one that we at Austrade talk about a lot as well. So yes, very common experience. I might ask, sort of along the same vein, a question for Adam in terms of this groundwork that you think is crucial to preparing for overseas expansion. I know you did a lot of work in this space, a number of years ago now when you were looking at international expansion. So would you like to share some reflections on that?
Yes, I can. And it's going back 7 years ago, as I said, and making a decision that we needed to expand. And as I said, the two markets were very much, the two countries, I should say, Singapore and Malaysia. We actually approached Singapore first, and it was doing research, but we also, again, it's about leveraging relationships, as we all know how important that is. And a very strong construction company in Australia called Lend-Lease do an enormous amount of work in Singapore and Malaysia in shopping mall developments, and working that relationship. And that was pretty critical for us because we needed to get what we call in situ, something in a market where people can see it and we believe was more superior and differentiated in so many ways. And we really invested a lot in that with a development 7 years ago called Gem in Jurong in Singapore, if anyone on this call knows it. And we worked with their development team, and enabling us to do that and get something on the ground in Singapore was remarkable for us. Just the amount of activity that came from it with your malls like Marina Bay Sands, And the reason I'm mentioning that is that gave us, we really wanted to get into Malaysia, and we learnt, and I learnt from that, that Malaysia tends to look at Singapore a lot for developments and innovation, and I was told that. And the result of that is we decided to do a very deep dive, we called it internally. It's just a literally due diligence on the Malaysian market, the number of malls, the stability of Malaysia, especially in investment, what the future outlook was, and the government, things Alvin talked about earlier. And it surprised us how much work we did on this, to be quite frank. Being a software company, we tend to just branch off and do things. And the investment we did internally to work on that really paid off for us. And probably the number one thing, which is obvious to anyone just doing a marketing course, is SWOT analysis and market analysis. And for us, our target market being these premium malls, there's volumes of them. And the reason we target malls, everyone, is there's an airport everywhere and they need it, but there's generally one in KL. And hospitals, they tend to put money, as Alvin in his type of technology, not ours, or beds. But shopping malls, and David knows this because we're in the same space, I think. We're going to have to connect a lot after this, is shopping malls invest on customer experience, and they want to differentiate, and they want to connect, and they want beautiful, inspirational software to drive you to spend money. And we really dive deep in how many of these malls are at that stage in premium, and research the competition. And there's quite a bit of competition in Malaysia, but by researching it and the cost structure, and these are all the things that we did, which is fairly obvious. But the other thing we had to do is very much define our product. And the Australian market and the Singapore market we found is a bit different to the Malaysian market. And again, we touched on this on cost structure. But we have an Abuzz software product, but we had to sort of lighten it down or really strip it back a bit so we can go in on a lower price, but ideally get volume. That was very much our plan. And as I said earlier, we didn't have local presence. We didn't have someone like me on the ground. So if you're going to provide a product like that to a reseller, it definitely has to be stripped back so they can go in, leverage their product with our product. Very simple, and then we can upsell it once it's installed, if that makes sense. It's literally getting it in and then upselling. And they were the things that we spent, and we also had to set our expectation. We're quite optimistic and aggressive in what we do. So we said to ourselves, in 6 months, we must target and win something to then decide if we hit this market. If not, we might pull out, which was probably too aggressive, but we leveraged our contacts. And I mentioned earlier KLCC or Petronas Tower. We absolutely targeted the number one mall in KL in Malaysia, thinking it's wise to do that. It's going to promote our product. And it's very interesting, this shopping mall, I should say, industry. And if you don't mind me using the term incestual, they all move around. There's a lot of very good people in Westfield, Australia, or Lend-Lease Australia, that all want to go for overseas deployments in Dubai, Malaysia, Singapore. And of course, we pick up the phone, we ring these people, yep, we're aware of you, we'll get us in. So we did a lot of that too. And that's how we got into Petronas Towers. And it's just enabled us to get good awareness to do that. So, I mean, in short, it's obviously doing your due diligence, diving deep, seeing the market. There was very low risk for us though. That's the other, it was very low risk. If it didn't work, you just move to the next market. And that was why we also hit Malaysia. There was very little cost to us to do it. Yeah, that's very much what we approached it as a team of people internally.
Yeah, that's great, Adam. And we could hold you up as a model citizen of doing your research, which is, again, something we often say. But, you know, it is putting aside your team's time and, you know, reading reports and doing that sort of thing, which we also think is so important. I have a question for you, David. Given your sort of experience in Malaysia and you're there on the ground at the moment, what's your experience of the sort of policy and ecosystem hubs and that sort of thing in Malaysia, and your, I guess, experience in what goes into creating a global hub for tech companies?
Yeah, very positive, I must say. In my opinion, the ecosystem here is very conducive for new companies and startup companies they want to come into the market. it's not huge, but it's not too small. It just has the right size that it does allow you in a relatively short period of time to know who is who do you have to talk to, where do you have to go. Obviously, I mean, we have, MDEC, the sponsors of this conference, who, they do a fantastic job in facilitating this. I mean, the new companies are coming into the market, as well as the local companies, and going overseas with the Malaysia Tech program, or obviously other initiatives like the Malaysia Digital Hub, obviously the MSc status for eligible companies. So there's a lot that obviously the government here is doing to support local tech companies, as well as to encourage other tech companies from overseas like us to come here. And then, I mean, in our case, being an Australian company, of course, Australia and Malaysia, they have government ties that go back to many, many years. There is a very strong framework in there, and it does cascade down. We do see it. Of course, we are like any other company, but it's true. Like, the governments are doing a lot of work in there to facilitate companies from both countries to go to each market. And then, of course, Alvin, he should be the one talking about this, but there's so many alumni here in Malaysia from Australian universities. So anyone you talk to, a client, or he might have a son or a daughter studying in Australia, or he himself could be an alumni. Those are all little things, soft things, but they do help because they do break the ice, and there's already some sort of familiarity in there. So we kind of, somehow know each other a little bit. So it does make things easier at the beginning. And it's just a matter of, remember at the beginning, you just have to be very, very, very active, and just have to go to all the buka puasas that you can, go to all the Tetare sessions, just go to all chambers of commerce events, and you give yourself 3 months. And in 3 months, really, you can really grow a significant network that really is going to help you. Here, people are very receptive, I would say. So always they're very welcoming. The first approach is always very easy. In other markets, maybe you call in and say, who are you? What do you want to talk about? But here, it's a new company, it's a new technology, you have this service offering. The first response is going to be positive. Of course, that's no warranty that you're going to close the business, but people are very receptive to new ideas, to new companies. They want to know what's out there that they could possibly adopt. So that really makes things easy. And it's a lot of agencies in here, that are really your Cradle and your Magic. It's a lot of agencies here trying to support the local startup scene, which does help, and does make it easier for the company.
Thanks, David. That's so great to hear. And yes, I agree. It's all about having those meetings and making those connections. And, I think as Adam said to you earlier, you've already made a connection in this panel, which is great. So it happens anywhere and everywhere. I will just note that I think we should have maybe 5 minutes available for Q&A from the audience if anyone does want to submit a question through the channel here. So I do have a couple more questions though, so we might keep going, but if anyone does wish to submit, please do. Just a question, I think I'll go to Alvin on this one. What was your experience of, and you sort of grew up in Australia, so perhaps you didn't have a culture shock, but what is it like for you and your colleagues who may be sort of moving between different business cultures and, personal experiences in different countries in doing business in new environments?
Yeah. Again, I'll try to answer this without any biasness. But look, Australia's always been a very friendly neighbor to Malaysia, not just in terms of working ties, but in terms of personal relationships as well. What I found, and I've worked, in other countries as well in Asia, including Indonesia, Philippines. And what we do a lot in Asia is we do a lot of overselling, right? And it's part of the culture to sell as much as you can. Whether you can do it or not, you kind of just sell whatever you can, right? But in Australia, I found that, look, the Australian culture is very collaborative, very friendly. There's a lot of transparency. And the most important thing, and things that Asians are trying to catch up on, is the candid feedback, right? So we find it really hard when someone says, hey, great job, mate, good job. And we're like, nah, people, it's all right. or hey, your tech needs to improve in this area, and we get really offended. But one of the things that you find in the Australian culture, it's really candid, it's really transparent, and it's not for any reason but to tell it as it is, right? And what we found when we were working in Australia and building partnerships is really just to tell it as it is, right? Don't oversell and don't overpromise, because at the end of the day, you got to deliver what you say, right? And that's what means the most. And a lot of our partners are basically telling us, it doesn't matter if you've got everything in place, just tell us where you are, and we can collaborate, or we can work together, and we can see where we can improve or where we can adopt different areas, right? So in terms of that culture side of things, it was quite different for my team members. And, in especially the chief technology officer, right? He's basically telling everyone that we can do everything. And then when it comes down to, hey, look, give me the empirical data, let us see what's the use case that you've done. And we're like, oh man, crap, we don't have any of this yet, right? So we realized that just to tell it as it is. And I think that's a great thing about the Australian culture, is it's very accepting, and there's no shortcuts to things, right? It is what it is. There's no roundabout and finding a back way door to get anything done. It's better just to, lay it out front and then to work towards that. So it's been a really good experience for us because we've been in many countries where you kind of don't know where you're heading towards, and everything sounds great. It's promising, but then, it's just like an Asian culture. You're just over promising. But in Australia, it's pretty straightforward, straight cut, and everyone's just really welcoming and candid, more importantly, which is an important aspect to us in our business. We're very willing to hear good feedback, honest feedback, and that's really helped us create really good partnerships in Australia. Yeah, and as Adam and David say, whether it's Malaysia or Australia, relationships are so important, right? And we're so close to our partners in Australia. We can't travel there, but yet we're still engaged nearly every other day, right? And we're just feeding each other with information, which just makes it so much better. Yeah, so that would be my few cents with it in a short time.
Yeah, and I'm sure, yes, exactly. You could go probably into reams of information about the different cultures, but I think, as you said, at the core of it, it's all about relationships, probably no matter wherever you are in the world. I do have a question to all panelists, so perhaps we can go around the room. One thing I always think is great is a piece of advice you have for anyone else considering international expansion. Is there something you wish you'd done differently? Is there something you definitely would do again? I know, Adam, you've mentioned doing that research, but yes, if there's one tip that you want people listening today to take away, what would it be? Perhaps, Adam, I'll start with you.
Oh, look, I'll be short and sweet. Once you make that decision, you go for it. As Alvin said, we are as he described us, I was sitting and listening, and transparency is a very important thing, and be direct, as you said. And it's a good way to do business, but we've learned in the other cultures the way they do theirs. But we 100% believe if we're going to do it, we as a team do it, we're all on the same page, and you go for it. And, there are hurdles in the way, challenges, etc. But that's part of business. And my advice would be, if you make it, be passionate and 100% go for it.
That's great advice. Thanks, Adam. Very inspiring. David, what do you think?
I'd say don't make use of the support that you might have at your hands from Austrade, from your local Austrade office, or from MDEC or whatever it is. I mean, make use of it. It's there. You'd be surprised, but some companies, they don't make use of it. And of course, why not? And they come into the market and they feel that they don't have a need. But I think it's very, very beneficial, and I think it's there. So I would recommend companies to make use of it for whichever agency they feel more comfortable working with. And maybe, of course, look for partners as well, potential partners, maybe from day one, that they will help you to grow faster, probably, and bigger, than just try to make it on your own.
Thanks, David. And I actually might just ask a follow-up question on that one. Have you, taken advice or services from some of these ecosystem supporters in your growth to Malaysia?
Definitely. I mean, so in our case, we work very close with Austrade in here in Kuala Lumpur, as well as other offices in Southeast Asia. And yeah, I mean, Kerb came to this part of the world maybe due to maybe a smart cities mission that was organized by Austrade, where we had the chance to visit Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, and Bangkok. It was a 1 week visit. And you think about it, right? In 1 week, all of a sudden, you are able to visit 3 cities. They introduce you to potential partners, potential clients. They explain you a little bit about the regulatory framework, what's happening. So it is very, very, very useful. So it does accelerate your plans a lot.
And I think it's all about, as you say, understanding who is supporting and getting in touch, and, you know, with MDEC as well, who is running events like these, and can you get yourself as a panelist or something like that, because, you know, it's always great to, you know, spread your message as well. So I definitely agree, David. Alvin, any tips from your side?
Sure. Probably from a Malaysian company moving to Australia. Really kind of work out what sort of partnership or structure that you want to build in Australia. Keep an eye on your cash burn. Obviously, setting up a company in Australia, being a Malaysian company, you're going to burn cash real quick, right? So you ain't going to reach your long-term goal if you don't really know how you're going to structure your business in Australia, right? So that's one of the things that we're learning. You know, you're probably going to burn, you know, quite a bit of cash if you don't have your proper partnership set up and your business model set up in Australia. Yeah.
Thanks, Alvin. And I think, you know, this looking forward and looking to the future, perhaps a broad question. I might go backwards through the order, but, you know, what's one thing that you would love to see, I guess, enhanced or increased between Australia and Malaysia, but also, you know, but the ASEAN countries in this technology space? You know, would you like to see more, and how can we bring that together? So, you know, conferences like these, what would you do if you could wave a magic wand to enhance engagement? Alvin, I'll go to you.
I'll go to me first. All right. Yeah.
Sorry.
This is a question that we didn't really prepare for, but I'm going to do my best to answer that. And specific to us, I would think that if we had some standard regulatory approvals and, you know, cross-board type of understanding in terms of government policies and, you know, how do you regulate software tech companies across board, right? So we're all aligned in the same, you know, direction, same focus with the same standards. That's really going to help us streamline, you know, moving into different countries and expanding real quick, which is important for startup companies. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Alvin. And yeah, and I think and that sort of makes me think, you know, that is something for people to be aware of too, that is a pain point for many companies in looking to expand, is they don't have that understanding, or there might be different, like you said, in the healthcare sector, there might be different requirements. So it's a great reflection, actually. David, what about you? What would you change or want for the future?
What would I change? Well, I do believe that this sort of events, like, I mean, the one we are having right now, I mean, they're very useful. And I think kudos to MDEC to put this together. And despite the pandemic and everything, here we are sharing ideas, sharing insights, and networking with each other, which I think is great. So these things, I mean, they're never too much. I think it's always great to be able to do that. And now even more, since we're all in lockdown in so many countries around the world, the fact that we're here, I mean, exchanging, and I think it's very valuable. So all these type of activities are always very welcome.
Thanks, David. And we're right on time. So, Adam, you get the last word. So, any reflections?
I can say anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'd back up what David said. And look, we've utilised Austrade from the 7 years ago. We expanded overseas, and it's been very useful. And we haven't done enough of it. We're starting to now in KL and Bangkok. And as David said, I mean, the world's a different place at the moment. Unfortunately, you know, we're doing a lot more of this. And it's very effective. And the more we do this, the better. And in our space, you know, we like being introduced to any business partners. As we established with David, we're in the same space, and it's really good to connect. But developers, anything like that, and Austrade on the ground there has a lot of connections for us. So if we can do more of that, do more conference calling, introducing our product more so they're familiar with it, and then finding partners, it's absolutely going to be more useful. It is. It's all about collaborating. So that would be great for us.
Thanks, Adam. And yes, it definitely seems like the theme is it's all about relationships and collaboration. And I'm so pleased to have been able to facilitate this session with all three of you today as part of that, and looking forward to the future. So thank you very much, MDEC, for putting us all on show today. And I'll hand back to you, Hazrul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, and all our distinguished panel members for that conversation and real-life tips about the digital ecosystem as well as doing business in the ASEAN region. We will now be moving forward to our next session of the day. It will begin very shortly, so do click join session and also complete the survey after each session. So to participants out there, see you in a bit.